Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I'm not able to make it today. I'm just not feeling very well. So we're going to do a little bit of notes, and after you guys watch the note video, you will have time to finish the immigration video, and then you'll turn those in, and then we'll be done. Tomorrow when I get back, I'll pass back your homework packets, and then the next section we'll do on Wednesday. So last time we were taking notes, we were dealing with all the immigrants who were coming into the United States, and the fact that a lot of people who were here, particularly the old immigrants, felt that the new immigrants were not necessarily the best type of people, and they started to have all kinds of associations and requirements on new immigration. So the U.S. government does start to respond to anti-immigration sentiment, and they passed a series of laws or legislation. The first one is the Literacy Test Act, which said that all immigrants must be able to read at least 40 words of English or in their native tongue, basically just to make sure that they had some basic education so that eventually they could fully learn English and become employed. And then we have the Chinese Exclusion Act, which banned entry to all Chinese except for students, teachers, merchants, tourists, and governmental officials. The anti-Asian sentiment is going to spread, not just in the Chinese population, but also with Japanese. We did have a lot of Japanese laborers who were coming to America on the West Coast, and there was an incident between the U.S. government and the Japanese government over the Chinese Exclusionary Act. The Japanese government is going to protest against the act, and eventually they're going to stop immigration here to the United States altogether. However, what it does do for the West Coast of the United States is it stops their labor supply. So in response to that, the U.S. government is going to agree to the Gentleman's Agreement, which says that the Japanese government would limit immigration of unskilled workers until segregation order was repealed, and eventually the Japanese segregation order was repealed. Eventually, the U.S. government is going to close all immigration to all Asian countries, but will continue to admit immigrants from Europe. Once people did come to the United States, again, mass majority of them are going to be moving to northern urban cities, and that's going to cause a lot of problems in these cities. So we have lots of natural and economic disasters that are going to impact farmers, causing millions of them to move to cities for industrial jobs. And then on top of that, we have all the people coming from Europe and the people coming from Asia. So we're going to see a huge increase in our urban population from 10 million to 54 million people. And you can then see the number of people that increased from New York City from 1850 to 1900. Same with Chicago, and also same with Pittsburgh, PA. The changes were great for the economy, but terrible for the urban poor. In the cities themselves, they did not have any city planning, so most people are going to live in relatively poor conditions. A lot of the streets are narrow because we have very low-rise apartments. They don't have indoor plumbing. They don't have electricity. A lot of the places don't actually have a lot of windows for ventilation. So urbanization is going to be the growth of the cities, and as the cities grow, we're going to start to see that there are a lot of problems that are going to be associated with the cities. Lots of people are going to start living in the cities, and the government and citizens do become concerned about the continuation of democracy because, again, the number of immigrants that are coming now in this new wave a lot of them are going to be Catholic. They're going to be from Southern and Eastern Europe, and a lot of these countries are not democratic. So you do have the American movement, which is designed to help people assimilate into city life. So that's why we are going to start to build schools and have lots of voluntary associations that provide programs that are going to teach English, American history, and government, cooking, and social etiquette to the new immigrants who are arriving. Some immigrants, again, are going to be reluctant to move away from their ethnic neighborhoods because it does provide them with a lot of security. Again, familiarity with the language, customs, religions, traditions, and food. And again, opportunities when they first arrive in order to get a job and to open a bank account. So eventually what you're going to start to see, and we had already talked about this, not within the first generation, but as the second and third generation people that are living in the United States, we are going to start to see a mixture of American immigrant cultures that's going to create new things in art, music, and also literature. Same time, we start to see, again, improvements in farming, and you always have to have a farming revolution, agricultural revolution, before you have the industrial one, but it does increase the amount of food that's going to be produced, which is good for everyone but the farmers, because our profits are going to start to decrease because supplies are going to get larger. As supplies get larger and larger, the profits for the farmers get smaller and smaller, and again, that's going to be forcing a lot of them to move to the cities for industrial jobs. One of the companies that's going to be created is going to be McCormick, and again, we've already talked about McCormick in terms of seasoning and spices that you can see in your kitchen today, but McCormick Reaper and the steel plow is going to revolutionize the farming industry, basically make farming a lot more efficient to increase your food production. Once Southern farmers start to arrive in industrial cities, they have to compete with African Americans who also move north for better economic opportunities, also to escape racial violence and political oppression, and that's going to cause a clash between the races as well. So although conditions are better for African Americans in the north, they're also going to see that there are some social, economic, and racial tensions in the north as well. So African Americans are going to move into ethnic neighborhoods very similar to immigrants as immigrants, and they're going to have better opportunities in the north and in the west than they would in the south. Cities had to determine how to provide services for everyone and to increase safety. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is housing. A lot of poor immigrants first lived in tenements, and they were crowded unsanitary multifamily housing for 2 or 3 families. Most of them, again, no electricity, no indoor plumbing. You don't have a lot of windows. We also are going to see the creation of ghettos, and ghettos are going to be based upon racial groups. They're going to live together due to social, economic, and political pressures. But basically, it's going to be economic. They're not going to be able to afford to live anywhere else. As poor immigrants and southern farmers move into the cities, the wealthy start to move out, and they're going to start to live in the suburbs. This also has become possible because of the Model T and also increase in mass transportation for the first time. So this leads to what is called social stratification, which is going to be organizing people based upon wealth. Governments did try to establish laws to ensure safe living. So the laws for minimal standards for plumbing and safety and ventilation did start to come into effect. So the Tenement House Development Department had a window law, and basically what it was that each of the new buildings that were built had to have at least one window in every single bedroom. So what you ended up having is the picture on the bottom, which is a new tenement house. In that hallway that you see is also going to allow you to have a courtyard in there, and that's where all the windows would be. So it looks like it is a good solution to the problem. The other picture next to it is the reality of it, and basically what you've created is a very small shaft. The shaft eventually is going to be filled up with garbage a lot of times, and most of the time people are not going to open the windows that lead into the shaft due to the fact that it's going to be really, really smelly. Working conditions in your factories are also going to be relatively bad because you do have a lot of unskilled workers that are going to provide a large labor supply. So if you don't want to do the job, they'll fire you and somebody else will for less pay in most cases. Some people, again, try to form unions in order to force owners to improve conditions and increase pay. The one union we already talked about, the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, they do have a lot of success because it was a skilled job and most people could not do their jobs. So they are going to be able to increase their wages and also get shorter working hours. Innovations in mass transportation, again, is what's going to allow people to move out into the suburbs. So in San Francisco, we're going to see streetcars start to develop, and also in Boston, we see electronic subways. Cities also had to find a way to provide safe and clean drinking water for everyone to control diseases, in particular cholera and typhoid. Many people today do not actually have access to clean water, and that's one of the actual school-wide projects that we do every year is having a dodgeball tournament in order to build a clean water source or a well in an African village. So eventually we are going to see that filtration systems are going to be built and chlorination systems are going to be put in place in order to remove bacteria from water. The larger population also meant that we have a lot more garbage and sewage and smoke from all of our factories. So cities started to have organized garbage collection and ways to actually clean up the environment. First, they're going to hire scavengers. They're going to be paid to sweep the cities, the streets, and collect garbage and clean out outhouses. However, most people don't actually do those jobs because it was relatively dirty, and of course, you did not receive a lot of money for it. So eventually, those sanitation jobs are going to be placed into a sanitation department. Sewer lines are going to be created, and that's going to be organized and controlled by the government. The new large immigrant population is also perceived as a threat to the American society, and we do see that crime is going to increase as people's lives, again, are relatively rough. They don't have money, don't have access and a way to get them. So police forces are going to start to develop. The first ones are going to be constables, which are responsible for suppressing riots and violent crimes. Neighborhoods are going to organize night watch programs to stop criminal activity and enforce the laws. And then eventually we have a professional police force, which is going to be salaried men that are going to be enforcing the laws and keeping the peace. Along with police departments, we also have the development of the first fire department. Fire was a big problem because the mass majority of our buildings originally are going to be built out of wood, and so they're going to catch fire a lot easier. So you do have firefighting brigades that are going to start with communities, and eventually they turn into volunteer and then professional fire department. So the first fire departments are just going to be bucket brigades, and that's going to be neighbors who form lines with buckets to, get water, and they pass the water-filled buckets to the fire and throw it on. Then we do eventually have professional fire department. We also have the inclusion of automatic sprinklers in all newly built buildings, and then laws that new buildings have to be built with brick, stone, or concrete in order to decrease the risk of fire. All right, so we're going to stop notes here, and what you have now is time for the remainder of the period in order to finish the video, which is your immigration video. When you're done, make sure your names are on them and turn them into the back table. I'll get those tomorrow, and again, tomorrow I'll pass out your homework packets, and then we'll continue on. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.